In the mid-1930s, Italy's fascist government, led by Benito Mussolini, was fairly established after having come into power in 1922. While he did initially come into power by an agreement with the king, he declared himself dictator in 1925. From this point onwards, many of his government's social and cultural policies were often combined with political beliefs and the desire to influence the political beliefs and values of Italians, as we will discuss. This object is an Italian schoolchild's notebook and is titled Giovenza in Marcia. It was printed in 1935 and is believed to have been used first in 1936. The front page of this notebook features a portrait of a young boy standing at attention with a rifle and a bayonet on his right shoulder and wearing a uniform reminiscent of the black shirts. This image is surrounded by a coloured geometric border with a heading that reads Giovenza in Marcia, meaning youth on the march, along the top, and the words Quaderno di Franci along the bottom, meaning French notebook. There are also the Roman numerals for the number 7 alongside this, indicating that it may be the 7th such notebook. Some handwritten scribbles appearing to be a maths equation, a name, and the year 1936 are also scribbled across the top. Despite its use as a child's school notebook, this image can help us to understand the social, cultural, and political history of Mussolini's government, particularly in the 1930s in which this notebook was produced. During this era, society, culture, and politics were often very intertwined as Mussolini's regime sought to push his political belief and newfound political movement into the lives of everyday Italians. This included pushing these beliefs onto children as well, as they were believed to be the next generation of fascist revolutionaries, leaders, soldiers, and workers. For Mussolini's government, children were an important way to propel the fascist state forward. Furthermore, indoctrinating children into fascism through school was an important way to recreate Italy and Italians. From 1935 to 36, Cesare Maria di Vecchi di Valsismon became the Minister of Public Education, and he pushed further the idea of schools becoming the propeller of the fascist state. He introduced pre-military training into schools to further militarize students and teachers in order to embrace the idea of a militia as the state, and the nation that unifies society through the principle of energy and concrete action. Essentially, he saw schools as a way to encourage fascism and the militaristic culture that the state wished to bring into Italian society. The youth was seen as the new generation of fascists, the heirs to all the benefits, current or future, of fascist Italy. In order to continue to encourage these ideas, the fascist government used propaganda in addition to school programs. Propaganda during this time took many forms, such as children's literature, pop culture, and the introduction of fascist youth groups. It was not uncommon for fascistized textbooks and stories to be used in the classroom during this era, and for the focus to be on Italian stories and heroes, instead of stories and heroes from other nations. This notebook appears to have been one of the forms of propaganda used to encourage children to join the fascist youth group program and to encourage fascist ideas of strength and military power. In this piece of propaganda, the boy's uniform is reminiscent of the black shirts, a fascist militia used by Mussolini to further his cause. Additionally, this uniform suggests that the boy may have been part of the Opera Nazionale Ballerà, or the O&B, which was a fascist youth group program run by the state. This program was run for all children. However, boys and girls were separated, as it was believed that there were different skills and values attributed to each gender. The O&B was formed by decree in 1926 and was run by the state in an attempt to indoctrinate the children into fascism. As time passed, the O&B became more and more popular, with 5.5 million children enrolled in 1936 to 37, in comparison to less than 500,000 enrolled in 1926. This organisation was highly militaristic, with a clear hierarchical structure, with teachers, military leaders, and priests instructing the children and being at the top of this pyramid. In addition to the youth group programs, the ONB also ran summer camps, which were often targeted to those more in need, such as those from poorer families or those who were orphans. Italian children living abroad were also encouraged to come to these camps. These camps had a similar focus to the youth groups, in that they also focused on pre-military training, physical and spiritual education, and vocational and technical education. Like the youth groups, these summer camps were also seen as a way to indoctrinate children into fascism. The separation of gender in both the youth groups and the camps allowed for the ONB to better promote the fascist ideals to the children. For boys, pre-military training and sport was the main focus, with ideas of masculinity, strength, heroism, and obedience being very strongly pushed. This image very clearly aligns with these values. The boy is holding the rifle and bayonet with confidence and strength. His stance at attention indicates obedience, and the whole image gives off the appearance of youth, strength, and control. This very clearly depicts the boy as an ideal boy, as what all the boys of the fascist regime should aim for. The activities for girls under the ONB were quite different to the boys. While they still did sports, these were aimed at creating healthy wives and mothers. This was in response to the changing attitudes regarding women's place in the workforce that was beginning to spread through Europe during this time. During World War I, many men had left their jobs to go and fight, and many had never returned. As such, women began to fill the employment gaps, and even after the war was well over, many wanted to retain their positions. Mussolini's government did not want this, and saw the ONB as a way to encourage the new generation of women to become stay-at-home wives and mothers that engaged in more appropriate pursuits. As such, many girls saw the ONB as no more than a social outlet, while for boys it could provide social mobility and better job prospects. By the late 1930s, participation in the ONB, or the GIL as it was later called, became required for certain elite jobs and military placements, and it was later made compulsory to attend until at least 14 years old, with failure to join resulting in being sent to a punishment brigade or rejection of jobs in the public service. The introduction and promotion of the ONB was a dedicated social policy from Mussolini's government that had the key aim of preserving and promoting fascism to the younger generation. This was a targeted attempt to influence and change Italy's cultural and political structure to continue to build and strengthen fascism. This image gives us a look into the propaganda used by the government to indoctrinate children into fascism and to encourage them to participate in the social and cultural policies, such as the ONB, that the government established. This image also clearly shows us what the ideal boy of that era would be, by showing us ideas of masculinity, strength, and militarism that are seen as desirable by the regime. In conclusion, this image provides a fascinating example of the political, social, and cultural environment during this period of Mussolini's government in Italy.